I want to start today with something that has been bothering me. It's this specific kind of headline that keeps popping up. You've probably seen it.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with it.
Yeah. A major tech company, maybe a big bank, announces a huge round of layoffs. And the press release says it right there. We're restructuring for AI efficiency.
It's the corporate catchphrase of the moment,
Yeah.
isn't it? It signals you're on the cutting edge, you're future-proof.
Exactly. But here is the puzzle. This is the part that just doesn't add up for me. If you talk to anyone who actually uses these AI tools,
The people on the ground.
the engineers, the writers, the analysts, they'll tell you the current generation of AI is, well, it's messy. It hallucinates facts. It writes buggy code. It needs constant human oversight.
It is definitely not ready to run a major corporation on autopilot.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So the question is, why are companies firing thousands of competent, expensive people for technology that still needs a babysitter?
It feels like a massive contradiction. You're firing the pilot while the autopilot is still, like, in beta testing.
Exactly. Are these executives just delusional, or is there something else at play?
I think there's something else.
So today we're doing a deep dive into an article called A Shorter Workweek as a Policy Response to AI-Driven Labor Displacement. And I want to be really clear up front.
Yeah.
This isn't a conversation about work-life balance in that wellness sense.
Yeah.
We're not talking about how nice it'd be to have a 3-day weekend.
No. This is all about the hard numbers. It's a straight-up economic analysis.
Hmm.
The core argument here is that the way we're handling AI right now,
This strategy of firing people to get a short-term stock bump.
right, that strategy is actually setting us up for a pretty major macroeconomic failure.
The author basically says we're driving the economy straight off a cliff, and the only way to steer away is to completely change how we define full-time work.
We're talking about a 32-hour work week, not as some kind of perk, but as, I think the term the source uses is essential economic infrastructure.
That's the key phrase, isn't it? It reframes the whole thing. We need to stop seeing a shorter work week as a luxury, like a company car, and start seeing it as, the plumbing or the electrical grid.
It's the infrastructure that keeps the market functioning when automation starts doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
So to really get why, we need to unpack 3 big ideas from the source. First, this concept of performative automation, which explains the whole firing people for buggy software thing.
Right.
Second, the paradox of productivity and demand. That's the big, scary economic part.
And finally, the actual policy roadmap. How do we get to a 32-hour week without, bankrupting everyone in the process?
Yeah, that last part seems pretty important.
It's tricky. If you get the policy wrong, you just end up with people working less and earning less, and the economy stalls anyway.
Okay, so let's start with that first piece, performative automation. The article talks about this huge gap between what AI can actually do and what executives say it can do. Is this just marketing?
It's less about pure marketing and more about incentives. You have to look at how modern companies are run. For decades, the guiding principle has been maximize shareholder value.
Right, and a CEO's bonus is almost always tied directly to the stock price.
Precisely. And right now, Wall Street is completely obsessed with AI. It's the narrative of the day. It's what drives investment.
So if you're a CEO, you're under enormous pressure to show that you're winning at AI.
And what's the fastest, most visible way to signal to the market that you're a lean, high-tech, efficient company?
You announce layoffs and say the robots are taking over?
Exactly. It's a performance. That's why the author calls it performative automation. The stock price pops in the short term. The company looks like it's on the cutting edge. Executives hit their quarterly targets, and they get their bonuses.
Even if the reality on the ground, in the actual departments, is a total mess.
It's often a disaster. And that leads to this other concept the source mentions, work intensification.
Which makes perfect sense. If I fire 3 people on my team because I think some AI tool can do their jobs, but the tool is only, say, 50% effective.
That work doesn't just disappear.
No, it lands on the survivors.
Right.
Yeah.
The remaining employees suddenly have a massive new workload, but it's a specific kind of work. They're not building new things. They're just fixing the robot's mistakes.
So you're paying your most experienced, most expensive people to basically act as janitors for the software.
You are. The article points out that senior engineers are spending more and more of their time just debugging AI-generated code or fact-checking reports spit out by an LLM.
And that creates another huge risk the source brings up, losing institutional knowledge.
When you lay off those experienced mid-level employees, you're not just losing their output, you're losing their context. They're the ones who know why a system was built a certain way.
We've seen this play out, haven't we, with some of the big airline outages or banking system glitches recently?
Exactly. The systems become fragile because the people who knew where all the, metaphorical bodies were buried
Yeah.
are gone. It creates a brittle organization.
But, and here's the kicker, that fragility, that doesn't show up for a year, maybe two. The stock price boost from the layoff happens today.
And that is the absolute definition of incentive misalignment. The executives are acting rationally for their own bank accounts.
But completely irrationally for the long-term health of the company.
And the economy as a whole.
Okay, so that explains what's happening at the company level. But the article then pivots to show why this is so terrifying if everyone starts doing it. This is the paradox of productivity and demand.
And this is really the heart of the whole argument. I mean, if you take any basic business course, you'll learn labor is a cost. Cutting costs is good. So cutting labor should be good, right?
Right. If I own a bakery and I get a robot that can bake perfect bread, I can fire my bakers, my costs go down, my profit goes up. I'm winning.
For you, the individual bakery owner, yes, you're winning. But here's the macro level problem. In our economy, wages aren't just a cost on a spreadsheet.
They're the source of demand.
Exactly. Your bakers are also your customers. Or they're customers for the shoe store, the car dealership, the phone company. They buy things.
So if the shoe company, the car company, and the phone company all look at their spreadsheets and fire their workers to save money,
Then pretty soon, there's nobody left with a paycheck to come buy your robot baked bread.
this is what John Maynard Keynes called the fallacy of composition, right?
That's it. It's the idea that what makes sense for one person to do is a complete disaster if everyone does it at the same time.
It's like standing up at a concert to get a better view. If I stand up, it works for me. If everyone stands up, nobody sees any better, and we're all just less comfortable.
That is a perfect analogy. The source calls this a self-undermining logic. A world where AI produces everything for almost zero labor cost sounds amazing, like a utopia.
But if that also means zero wages, then you have warehouses full of cheap stuff and zero customers who can afford to buy it. You've destroyed the very consumer base your business needs to survive.
We have.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. We've heard this, robots will take our jobs, fear, for over a century. Usually automation just makes things cheaper so people have more money to buy other new things. Why is AI different?
That's a fair question. And historically, that's been true. But the article argues the speed and the scale of AI are what make this different.
Okay.
In the past, you might automate one sector, like manufacturing, and workers would shift to the service sector. But AI is poised to displace labor across almost every cognitive field at once: coding, writing, law, analysis. If you do that simultaneously, without a plan to redistribute the gains.
You create a demand gap faster than new jobs or industries can possibly be created. It's that hit-and-run management style again, but on a national scale.
Precisely. And that gap is where you get a major recession. The argument is we can't just cross our fingers and hope the market figures it out over the next decade. We need a structural fix now.
Which brings us to the history. Because the article makes a great point that the 40-hour work week wasn't some law of nature. We invented it to solve a very similar problem.
We did. It's easy to forget that before the 1920s and 30s, the standard was often a 60-hour week. 6 days. It was brutal.
And the shift to 40 hours wasn't just about being nice. The famous example is Henry Ford.
Right, in 1926. And he wasn't doing it out of the goodness of his heart. He had two key realizations. The first was that he needed to create a weekend economy.
He needed his workers to have free time so they could actually go out and use the cars he was selling them.
He was literally manufacturing leisure time to create customers for his product. But his second realization was about productivity. And this is a really counterintuitive point the source highlights.
Which is that as work hours go down, productivity per hour often goes up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially for cognitive work. You might be able to tighten bolts on an assembly line for 10 hours straight. But you absolutely cannot write complex legal briefs or code an intricate piece of software for 10 hours. Your brain just turns to mush.
The error rate skyrockets. Which brings us right back to the buggy AI code we were talking about at the start.
It's all connected. So when we moved from 60 to 40 hours, the economy didn't collapse. In fact, productivity soared, and we built the modern consumer middle class. The argument today is that we're trying to run 21st century AI on a labor framework built for 1920s factory.
And that friction is what's causing all the problems. But here's where I get a bit skeptical. How do we actually do this? How do we move to a 32-hour week?
the practicalities.
Yeah, because if I'm a CEO and I decide to be the good guy and cut everyone's hours but keep their pay the same, my labor costs are suddenly 20% higher than my competitors. I'll get crushed.
You've just hit on the central dilemma. It's a classic prisoner's dilemma. Individual companies can't do this alone. If one firm acts unilaterally, they're at a huge disadvantage. But if all firms do it together, everyone benefits from a healthier economy with more customers.
So this is a coordination problem. The market can't solve this by itself.
Correct. The article is very clear on this. It's a market failure, and it requires government-level coordination. And that brings us to the policy solutions and this idea of the shorter work week as economic infrastructure.
I really do like that framing. It takes it out of the realm of being a social nice-to-have and makes it about keeping the engine of the economy running. So what's the plan look like? The source mentions a graduated reduction.
Right, you don't just flip a switch and say nobody works on Fridays anymore. That would be a shock to the system. The proposal is a step-down approach. You might legislate a move from 40 hours to 36 over a few years, then maybe to 32 as certain AI adoption milestones are hit.
Okay, but the most crucial detail here, the part that makes this whole thing work, is the money.
Yes, this is the non-negotiable part of the author's argument.
Yeah.
It absolutely has to be a reduction in hours without a reduction in pay.
Income maintenance. Because if you cut my hours to 32, but also cut my pay by 20%, we're right back where we started. I don't have the money to buy things. The paradox of demand kicks in.
Exactly. The whole point is to redistribute the gains from automation. If a robot helps an employee do their job in half the time, who gets that benefit?
Yeah.
Right now, 100% of it goes to the owners of the capital,
Right.
the shareholders.
This proposal says you pay out a portion of that gain to the worker in the form of time while keeping your purchasing power the same.
You got it.
But how do you make companies do that? You can't just ask them nicely.
No, they'll fight it. The article suggests a classic carrots and sticks approach. The carrots are things like tax incentives. You could offer a lower corporate tax rate to any firm that reduces hours without cutting pay.
So the government helps shoulder some of the transition cost.
Right. But there are bigger sticks, too. The source points to public procurement. The government spends trillions on contracts. They could simply mandate that to be eligible for a federal contract, you have to adopt the 32-hour standard.
Wow, that's a huge lever. You want that billion-dollar defense contract. You play by the new rules.
It would move the needle for the biggest companies overnight. And a third tool is tying it to AI subsidies. Governments are already pouring public money into AI research and development.
So strings attached.
Exactly. You want this public grant. You need to show us your workforce transition plan. It's basically saying, if we, the public, are going to fund the robots that might replace our jobs, then we have a right to ensure those robots lead to us working less, not becoming unemployed.
It reframes the entire conversation. Right now, we treat technology like it's a hurricane that just happens to us.
And this proposal says, no, technology is a tool, we built it. The economy is a set of rules, we made them, we can change them. If we have tools that create abundance, the logical outcome should be that humans work less.
You know, it's funny, the source notes that tech executives themselves are always predicting this future. They get on stage and say, in the future, humans will work 3 days a week and write poetry.
Yes, it's always this grand utopian vision.
But then they go back to the office on Monday and lay off 10,000 people to hit a quarterly target.
And that's the gap between their prediction and their action. They see the logical endpoint, but their short-term incentives are pushing them in the exact opposite direction. The policy is the bridge that gets us there without crashing the economy first.
So really, if we zoom out, we're at a fork in the road. Path A is what we're doing now. Performative layoffs, work intensification, and a huge risk of a demand crash.
And Path B is saying, let's acknowledge AI as a game changer and adjust the rules of the game, the work week, to match that new reality. It means sharing the benefits of all this incredible technology.
Instead of a few people owning the robots and everyone else being left behind, we all get back the one resource you can't buy: time.
Time for community, for family, for creativity, all the things that AI actually can't do. If the machines are going to handle the grunt work, we should be focused on being more human, not trying to compete with them.
It really makes you think. And I want to leave our listeners with one final thought the source sort of implies. If AI is going to do, say, 20 or 30% of our work for us, why are we all still pretending we need to sit in a chair for 40 hours a week as if that technology doesn't even exist?
It's the ultimate question, isn't it? Are we working to be productive, or are we just performing the act of labor for its own sake?
That's the question we should all be asking. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.